to week 2. Here we are with Dana and I again. And just a reminder, if you missed week 1, we are doing a month-long declutter and organize collaboration with Dana and also some crafty YouTubers. And they're giving inspiration on how they organize their space. And Dana is helping us through the month with different prompts to help us declutter and get ready. So Dana is the declutter expert who got me inspired to reach out and ask her if she could help us. And so Dana, tell us about your book.
Okay. We did a couple of takes of that, anyway. Sometimes it's hard to remember book titles. So anyway, I remember because I wrote it. I'm the author of Decluttering at the Speed of Life. I'm the creator of the 5-step no mess decluttering process that allows you to declutter without creating a bigger mess and make progress, and only progress in whatever amount of time that you have. So
yes. Yeah. So last week we worked on our floors. This week, week two's prompt is to clear off your workspace. So Dana, do you want to kind of talk about the workspace?
So the reality of a craft room or a craft space, whatever you have, is that it can end up getting very overwhelming very quickly because pretty much everything is useful in crafting, right? So we actually don't ask ourselves what's useful. Instead, we ask, where would I look for this first? And is there actually room for it in that place where I would look for it first? Okay. And I teach a concept called the container concept. And what that means is space is finite, and the size of the space determines how much of something I can keep and this space actually be able to stay under control. There's a video on my channel that you can go watch. We'll link to it here in the description that explains the container concept. But with that container concept, we also acknowledge that the number one thing that deserves space, especially in a workspace like your craft room, is you. You deserve space first. You're able to actually do the work, right? And so therefore, the work surface that you have is not a storage space. Things can't live permanently on the space where you need to be doing the actual project. And that's why craft spaces can be so frustrating, right? It's because things start just living on there and it feels like I want to be creative, but in order to be creative, I've got to move and deal with all these things before I can actually do the creative thing. So acknowledging that the purpose of this space, we're going to name it, we're going to define it as a work space, which means it needs to not have anything live there. So as you go through your space, keep that in mind. As you declutter this workspace, realize that even though, yes, technically I've always looked for this item on this space, when I ask myself, where would I look for this first? I'm taking this space out of the equation because nothing can be stored here. Nothing can live here. This has to be a place for me to do the actual work. So when we take that out of the equation and we go, okay, where would I look for this first? Then go with the next spot. And remember that when you're asking where you would look for something first, you're asking that because you don't know. Because it doesn't have a home. So it is not asking yourself, where does this item go? Where should it live? That's how we end up with things in all these weird places. And we go, well, I got organized and now I don't know where anything is. We're not doing that, right? Instead, we're saying, where would I look for it first? At the beginning of what I assume was going to be a 3-hour search for this item, right? Like I assume that it's going to take me forever to find this thing, but where's the first drawer that I would open? What's the first bin that I would look in if this space was actually clear the way that I want it to be, right? And that is how you're going to work item by item through this space.
Okay, so just even that, I have a question. Okay, because I did my workspace, but it's also where I record videos. So I have lights and stuff on my workspace, but I have like a section where I work within to have the video. But around that table, I have little containers of things. Like I have things that I reach for, grab for, I have a printer. So do you think if it's not for recording, do you think I should clear off that whole workspace?
Okay, that's such a great question, because a lot of times people are like, but this stuff also, as long as it doesn't prevent you from doing the work that you need to do there,
Okay.
it can live there.
Okay.
But that's why we give this space one definition. This is my workspace.
Okay.
I might have a container of pens on my workspace,
Okay.
but I can only have it there as long as it can still function as my workspace. It doesn't prevent me from being able to do the work that I need to do here. Does that make
Gotcha.
sense?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Okay, perfect. Yeah. Okay, so there might be a few things that I need to go back and edit. Not in the video, but like on my workspace that could probably have a different home now that we kind of talked about that. So that's exciting. And then I have a couple other questions after going through my workspace that people might have. The first one is I have unfinished projects, and they're not like I can say, I should take a picture or show you B-roll or something, but this like L-shaped area is what I'm considering my craft workspace. Where I'm sitting right now is my editing work on my digitals workspace, right? So where I do my crafting and make my journals, it's an L shape, and I have a stack of unfinished journals. And that's kind of where they've been living. I wouldn't say that's the best home, but what do you recommend for unfinished projects?
Okay, so it feels like that's a different thing, and so it needs a different method, but it actually is really important to stick with the same process, which is if I needed an unfinished journal, where would I look for it first?
Mm-hmm.
Because if you have unfinished journals,
Mm-hmm.
they deserve a space in your home because that is what you do. This is your crafting thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
So give it a space, and that space is a container. It's a limited space.
Okay.
So if they're not, I don't want them to live here because this needs to be workspace.
Mm-hmm.
So where would I look first for these? If it's a spot on the shelf, then that's a defined place. And the fact that it's a defined limited space means that when I take it to that space and I make that the spot for these unfinished journals, that's a limit on how many unfinished journals I can have, right?
Right.
And therefore, it helps me naturally sort out the ones that are important enough to me to
Mm-hmm.
actually put there,
Mm-hmm.
and the ones that I started on and then I kind of was like, this isn't actually something I like, and that's why it ended up as an unfinished. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, I totally get it.
The ones that deserve space and the ones that don't. The other thing I want to say, and this is really important for craft people, and we kind of talked about this in your video, although I may have had to edit out some of it, is finishing the project counts as decluttering. Because so many times it feels like, no, I'm supposed to be decluttering right now. And so I've got all these unfinished projects. And no, I'm supposed to be working. So those things just have to be set aside. But if you can spend 5 minutes, 20 minutes to do the last few things that need to be done on this, and then it's obvious to you, it's easy to you where it actually goes, or it can go live its life somewhere if you're selling it or whatever you're doing, right? Finishing that project means it no longer is in limbo. And
that's huge.
It's no longer clutter. And so finishing the project counts as cluttering because now it's not in pieces. Now it's not in limbo, and it can just go to actually.
That is huge. That's huge because I think if anyone watching this just had what I had, an aha moment of giving yourself permission to finish the project before you clean up this other space. Like, you have the permission to finish this.
Finishing the project is cleaning up the space.
Right.
Because it's now no longer.
I've never thought of it like that before.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times I'm like, oh no, I have to do this, this, and this, like you're saying, before I do this.
Yep.
No. You have permission to finish the journal because that is using your supplies and
Yep.
Yeah, and then eventually you put all that stuff away, and that's all part of the decluttering. Well, there you go.
Okay, I've solved all your problems. Oh, yay.
That's awesome. Week 2, just to recap, the prompt is to clear off your workspace. You can set a timer and go for it. Put on a Netflix video, and you'll go through the same 5-step process and work on your workspace.
And if you haven't watched the video where Cara and I went through her clearing off the floor, watching that while you're working on this space is going to be really helpful in you understanding how the no mess process actually plays out and works in a craft area.
Right. Because it's the same thing, just a different spot.
Yep.
All right. And we will see you next Friday for prompt 3. Remember to check the description for this week's crafty folks giving us their tips on how they organize their craft space. And we'll see you soon.
Okay.
Yay.